All right, take it away, Terry.
All right. In our last session, 27, we heard a couple of letters from Morya again, 45 and 46. He talks about in the first one the fact that the septenary trial, 7-year trial of the Theosophical Society, was going to come to an end in November of 1882. That would be the end of 7 years. And he said that even though in the 6.5 years that had transpired, there had been quite a bit of progress made, it hadn't fulfilled all of their expectations. So he warned Sinnett that come November, there would be a reckoning. The supervisors, the Mahachohan and those above him, would review the situation and decide whether or not it was going to continue or whether the brothers would disappear like vapor into the ocean. In other words, go back to their previous status quo. In the next letter, 46, he answered some cosmological questions that Sinnett had asked in the meantime, specifically about what science had learned, anthropologists had discovered about different groups of people in England specifically. They had identified 4 completely different groups of people, which they said had gone back as far as 240,000 years. And Morya said, well, they're pretty correct on most of this, except that that particular group was there at least 100,000 years prior to the period that they say they were. And he said, instead of 4 groups of people, there are actually 5. And the current group in England would be the 5th. So a little bit of background of what he had been bringing them up to date on. Now we're on letter number 47, and guess what? Guess who this is from?
KH.
Yes.
He's back.
So he's back after his long, long journey. He went into samadhi right around the beginning of October. Within the first few days of October, he came out of it on December 24th, 1881. So a period of around 85 days. And it took a long period of time. We're now in February of 1882. And it took him a while to recover, but plus he's had a lot of other things to take care of, which we will find out about. So take it away.
Letter number 47. My brother, I have been on a long journey after supreme knowledge. Wow, amazing. And it took a long time to rest.
He was traveling intergalactic space, and without revealing anything, we can surmise that he was visiting perhaps different civilizations in other solar systems.
Then, upon coming back, I had to give all my time to duty and all my thoughts to the great problem.
Now, we don't know what the great problem is. It probably has to do with all of humanity, and not specifically the problems of the Theosophical Society.
The great problem sounds like just the challenge of earthly existence and learning and growing.
And the fact that humanity, as we've said many times, is at the nadir, at the very bottom of materiality. And we are as far separated from spirit as we can possibly get.
It is all over now. The New Year's festivities are at an end, and I am self once more. But what is self? Only a passing guest whose concerns are all like a mirage of the great desert.
All right,
Wow.
he's being very poetic here and very profound in everything, as you can imagine, after this amazing journey that he took, which we can only guess at what that might have entailed.
But what is self? Only a passing guest whose concerns are all like a mirage of the great desert.
And this is one of the things he obviously not learned because he knew about it before, but experienced it in great detail. This, what is the spiritual self as compared to what is this personality that all of us perceive to be ourself. We think this is ourself. And he knows, without a doubt, that that is not the case. But the New Year's festivity are at an end. Now, apparently, KH, besides all of his other duties, is also the master of ceremonies for the Tibetan Buddhist operations in Tibet. So remember when he left, before he left on his long journey, he said that either had to be at that current time, at the beginning of October, or it would have to wait until after these festivities. So it took him a lot of energy, a lot of time and effort to arrange for these New Year's festivity, whatever those were. And those happened around, I believe, that year, because it's a New Year's changes every year in the Tibetan calendar. I believe it was around February 18th when the New Year was.
Anyhow, this is my first moment of leisure. I offer it to you, whose inner self reconciles me to the outer man, who but too often forgets that great man is he who is strongest in the exercise of patience.
Always reminding him because of his impulsivity.
Look around you, my friend. See the three poisons raging within the heart of men: anger, greed, delusion, and the 5 obscurations.
Now, let's talk about first the 3 poisons. And these are both Buddhist terms. The 3 poisons: anger, greed, delusion. And all of these are lower emotional qualities. As we've pointed out so many times, getting rid of ego involves getting rid of your attachment to drama and excitement and emotional activity. If you can bring that way, way down, that's how you get rid of ego. So these are the baser emotions that people experience. Anger, greed, selfishness. My gosh, look around you and you see how greedy and how self-centered people are. They hardly recognize that there's anyone else around them except as they can help you promote your own ego. And then the third one is delusion. Not seeing things clearly. Being easily taken advantage of because you're so easily manipulated. Look at the advertising industry. They recognize, and the political situation. 90% of the people can be manipulated. I'm taking a wild guess. But it's amazing how easy it is to manipulate people. And how do they do it? Through our emotions. If we start analyzing and thinking more clearly and get those emotions under control, then they can't take advantage of us anymore.
So after we hear the three poisons, then he says the five obscurations, which are envy, passion, vacillation, sloth, and unbelief.
So obscurations are things that obscure the truth from us. They're filters, they are impediments, things that prevent us from seeing clearly and seeing things as they are.
This is textbook Raja Yoga.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
to our friends who study the sutras, we have a different name for these obscurations, and it's avidya, which means the exact same thing. Avidya means the opposite of vidya, which is seeing and knowledge clearly. So the prefix a is not seeing clearly. So avidya, which Patanjali teaches in the Yoga Sutras, is the same thing, and they're said slightly different, but envy, passion, vacillation, sloth, and unbelief. Similar, like most spiritual traditions have similar teachings. So are these right from Buddhism?
Yes, they
mentioned?
are.
Okay.
Yes, they are. Envy, of course, jealousy, wanting something that somebody else has.
Yeah.
Passion is just emotional activity in general. Vacillation, meaning that you can't make up your mind. You go back and forth because you can't think clearly. Sloth, of course, is laziness, and we all are guilty of that at different times. And unbelief, when he talks about unbelief, he's not talking about the religious term where you don't believe the edicts of a god or someone who is in great authority saying this is how it is, and if you don't believe it, you're an unbeliever. It's a pejorative in religious terms, but he's not using it that way. He's talking about unbelief as not being able to recognize truth from untruth. So that is what constitutes unbelief in their system.
It would benefit, I believe, if we just mention this idea of passion. It may not have landed powerfully, but when Terry just said a moment ago, passion here refers to any emotional activity, and maybe we should just say that is a thing. So emotional activity. We could talk for a week about this alone, and if you would like to see and learn more about why we're saying that emotional activity is an obscuration of truth, either check out our book. We've got multiple chapters in the Ancient Wisdom book about why emotions do obscure the truth. And this is all emotions, not just negative emotions. Or, of course, you can read Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth, to see why emotions obscure the truth.
They point out more than once that every emotion, not just bad emotions, but even so-called good emotions, take a toll on us. They reduce your energy, they zap your energy, and you are worn out afterwards from it. Just pay attention to that in your everyday life. You get upset about something, your energy level goes down. And guess what? At the same time, your resistance to diseases, infections goes down too. Your stress level affects your ability to stay healthy.
Your immune system gets compromised.
It gets compromised.
So he continues, the three poisons and the five obscurations, ever preventing them seeing truth.
That's the goal, is to see clearly.
They will never get rid of the pollution of their vain, wicked hearts, nor perceive the spiritual part of themselves. Will you try, for the sake of shortening the distance between us, to free yourself from the net of life and death in which they are all caught, to cherish lust and desire less?
So he is even more devoted to trying to get Sinnett over to their side. He's trying to give him incentive to extract himself from this exterior life that he lives. He enjoys the fine life, fine dining, and all of the comforts of a man of means living in India, but having a certain position in society. He's really trying because he sees potential in this man.
I am only now able to correspond with you. At the same time, let me tell you that it is more difficult than before to exchange letters with you, though my regard for you has sensibly increased, instead of being lessened as you feared. And it will not diminish except as a consequence of your own acts.
So he's putting him on notice. It's not because of me. I'm doing everything possible. So whether or not we're able to continue to communicate will depend on whether or not you make the effort to come out of your world and come into ours.
That you will try to avoid raising any such obstacle, I know well, but man, after all, is the victim of his surroundings while he lives in the atmosphere of society. We may be anxious to befriend such as we have an interest in, and yet be as helpless to do so as one who sees a friend engulfed in a stormy sea when no boat is near to be launched, and his personal strength is paralyzed by a stronger hand that keeps him back.
And he's pointing out again that it all depends on him, Sinnett. KH can't make him do anything.
Why do you think KH is even saying this, though?
He's just emphasizing that everything depends on Sinnett. Only he can make it happen. And they've said that time and time again, that the chela is the one who has to make the effort. No one else can make it for them. It is one person only that can make that connection happen.
Yes, I see your thought, but you are wrong. That's funny.
Yeah.
Blame not the holy man for strictly doing his duty by humanity.
And he's talking about the Chohan.
Oh, wow, okay. Had it not been for the Chohan and his restraining influence, you would not be reading now again a letter from your trans-Himalayan correspondent. Really?
Yeah.
Would it not be from the Chohan and his restraining influence? Who's he restraining?
I'm not sure. That I don't know.
He's clearly not in huge favor of KH corresponding in the first place.
No, he wants this. He wants this to work, obviously.
But he reluctantly allowed it.
At the beginning, but then he took more of an interest in it. Remember the letter from the Chohan, the Chohan, several months previous. Mm-hmm. He laid out in great detail, what he expected that could happen, but he didn't say it would happen. Mm-hmm. So he's hopeful too. Mm-hmm. He's very hopeful.
The world of the plains is antagonistic to that of the mountains that you know. But what you do not know is the great harm produced by your own unconscious indiscretions. Shall I give you an instance? Remember the wrath produced on Stainton Moses by your too imprudent letter, quoting ad lib from my letter to you about him? The cause generated at that time has now developed its results. Not only has Stainton Moses completely estranged himself from the society, some of whose members believe in us, but he has determined in his heart the utter annihilation of the British branch.
All right. So after all of this positive talk about still being in communication with the Mahatmas, now he's telling him the results of this action of his in the past that he had been warned about could cause some serious results. And now he's saying we are now seeing those results.
A psychic society is being founded, and he has succeeded in bringing over to it Wilde, Massey, and others. Shall I also tell you the future of that new body? It will grow and develop and expand, and finally, the Theosophical Society of London will be swamped in it, and lose first its influence, then its good name, until Theosophy in its very name becomes a thing of the past.
So he's not giving a very positive outlook for this new society. And it doesn't have a name yet, but it will be called the Society for Psychical Research. And it was specifically organized to investigate phenomena in general, but really to investigate the Theosophical Society. But notice that the people who were founding it were all Theosophists, but they were also spiritualists. And they felt wounded by these attacks, as they perceived them, on their beliefs in spiritualism. So they are angry, especially Stainton Moses. He's very angry. But they're going to try to get some other recruits, and they will succeed. It's going to end up being an enormous problem.
It is you alone, the simple action of your swift pen, which will have produced the nidana and the tendrel, the cause and its effect.
Now he's using first a Sanskrit word and then a Tibetan word, the cause and the effect.
So nidana is cause and
Tendrel is the effect. Yeah, it's karma, the two aspects of karma.
And thus the work of 7 years, the constant, untiring efforts of the builders of the Theosophical Society will perish, killed by the wounded vanity of a medium.
The wounded vanity of a medium being that of Stainton Moses. And this is something that we all need to be aware of. If you're going to be doing this sort of work and hope to work on behalf of the Mahatmas, you have to be very careful in how you point out faults in other belief systems, religions, whatever, because people invest their sense of self in those systems. If you attack their beliefs, that's an attack on them. And any attack on their ego is going to bring out anger and a need for revenge. So just be aware of that. We have to be aware of that in our teachings too. Some people will be offended by it.
And it happens. Yeah.
On the other hand, we're obligated to tell the truth. It's not out of any act of superiority or trying to make someone else smaller. It's about telling you what is the truth, what we have found to be the truth. You can either disagree with it or you can perhaps see things the way we do, but it's not an attack on you. It's not an attack on anything. As we've said before, if you believe in Christianity, there is an aspect of Christianity that has the exact same truth. It's called esoteric Christianity as opposed to the exoteric Christianity. And the same with Hinduism. There is an exoteric brand and there's an interior type of Hinduism that has the exact same truth that the ancient wisdom teachings has.
The simple act on your part is silently digging a chasm between us. The evil may yet be averted. Let the society exist in name only till the day it can get members with whom we can work effectively. And by the creation of another counteracting cause, we may be able to save the situation. The hand of the Chohan alone can bridge it, but it must be yours that places the first stone for the work. How will you do it? How can you do it? Think of it well if you care for further intercourse. They want something new, a ritual to amuse them.
Now, I don't know who all he is talking about, but one person in particular was William Quan Judge in America. He, along with a couple of other people, were trying to keep the society alive in New York City, but they weren't doing well. Everyone had lost interest because they still didn't have much literature to go on. And so they were hoping for something, and they were clamoring for a ritual of some sort. They had talked about it a couple of years previously in New York City about creating a ceremony of some sort. And so they were hoping that that would attract people. And they had been begging HPB and Olcott to come up with some kind of a ritual that they could use in their meetings. But he points out they want something new, a ritual to amuse them.
Consult with Subba Rao. I can come nearer to you, but you must draw me by a purified heart and a gradually developing will. Like Terry always says, come out of your world into ours. Like the needle of the compass, the adept follows his attractions. Is this not the law of the disembodied principles? Why then not of the living also? As the social ties of the carnal man are too weak to call back the soul of the deceased, except where there is a mutual affinity which survives as a force in the region within the terrestrial region, so the calls of mere friendship or even enthusiastic regard are too feeble to draw the brother who has passed on a stage of the journey to him he has left behind, unless a parallel development goes on.
Now, he's referring again and again to the fact that he, KH, has made a great leap in his consciousness, and one side effect is that it has made a greater distance between him and Sinnett, even between him and his own chelas, but they are high enough that they can make that leap still. Sinnett is now even further apart from KH at this point because of this change in consciousness.
Morya spoke well and truthfully when saying that a love of collective humanity is his increasing inspiration.
This is interesting because KH is the embodiment of love of humanity. It's innate. It's who he is. It's his nature. He's a teacher by birth, and he's a lover of humanity in his nature. That's just his inner self. And Morya, on the other hand, is more cut and dried. He's a military leader, basically, first ray. KH is the epitome of second ray. Morya is the epitome of first ray. But even a military leader can have great love and respect for the people that he works for and with. And he is learning, too, that love of humanity is a wonderful motivator for spiritual progress. One of the reasons KH is making such amazing progress is his love of humanity. That's how you become a bodhisattva. That's how you become a Buddha.
True love, unconditional love
Yes.
of humanity. All this I say not because its substance has not been told to you before, but because I read your heart and detect in it a shade of sadness, not to say of disappointment, that hovers there. You have had other correspondence, but still are not perfectly satisfied. To gratify you, I write with some effort to bid you keep a cheerful frame of mind. Your strivings, perplexities, and forebodings are equally noticed, good and faithful friend. In the imperishable record of the masters, you have written them all.
And that's in the Akashic records.
There are registered your every deed and thought, for though not a chela or even a protege, as you understand the term, still you have stepped within the circle of our work. You have crossed the mystic line which separates your world from ours, and now, whether you persevere or not, whether we become later on still more living and real entities or vanish out of your mind like so many dream fictions, you are virtually ours.
This is really interesting. There is a real connection between KH and Sinnett. Whether or not they knew each other in a previous life, we don't know. But for whatever reason, KH has taken a very real interest in Sinnett because, and he always says, I can read your heart. And that's what he says. He knows he is a kind person by nature, too. He knows that he can develop this pure love of humanity if he makes the effort. He sees so much potential in this man. But he says also, just because of the efforts that you've made already, you belong to us. So whether it's in this lifetime, whether it's in another lifetime, you will succeed. It's up to you as to how long that takes.
Your hidden self has mirrored itself in our akasha. Your nature is yours, but your essence is ours. The flame is distinct from the log of wood which serves it temporarily as fuel. At the end of your apparitional birth, and whether we, too, meet face to face in our grosser rupas, which means bodies, you cannot avoid meeting us in real existence. Yea, good friend, your karma is truly ours, for you imprinted it daily and hourly upon the pages of that book, where the minutest particulars of the individual stepping inside our circle are preserved.
And when he's talking about your karma is ours, he's talking about his unselfish karma. His personal karma that we all have has to be worked out by the personality. But his good karma, so to speak, that which is beneficial to all of humanity, that is what he's talking about. That's our karma too.
And that, your karma, is your only personality to exist when you step beyond.
So your personal karma is what will carry over. That you have to work out. The other is all of us combined. It's group karma at that point.
In thought and deed by day, in soul struggles by nights, you have been writing the story of your desires and your spiritual development. Everyone does this who approaches us with any earnestness of desire to become our co-worker. He himself participates the written entries by the identical process used by us when we write inside your closed letters and uncut pages of books and pamphlets in transit.
And then he points out specifically, see pages 32 and 35 of the report sent by Olcott. Now, in those days, one of the ways to make books and pamphlets less expensive was that when they're printed on very large sheets of paper. And those sheets are then folded in two different directions, sewn together in a book, or stapled if it's a pamphlet. But they don't cut them for whatever reason, because you would have to have the guillotine blade to cut them. So they bind them together, and then when they're sold, the person gets the book, and you can't even read the book until you take a paper knife and cut them open. So if you ever have an old book, you might find that some of the pages are kind of ragged. Now this one I've taken to a printer and had them cut the pages, but you can see how ragged some of these pages are because they often were not cut very carefully. This is a very old copy of the Mahatma Letters. In fact, it may be an original it is from 1923. But that's how the books were printed cheaply in those days. And if you ever have one of those old books and see how ragged the edges are, that's probably why that's the case.
I tell you this for your private information, and it must not appear in the next pamphlet from Shimla.
So he was pointing out that he wrote messages inside a book, a pamphlet that Sinnett received in the mail, and that hadn't even been cut open yet.
During the past few months especially, when your weary brain was plunged in the torpor of sleep, your eager soul has often been searching for me. and the current of your thought has been beating against my protective barriers of Akash, like the lapping wavelets against a rocky shore. What that inner self, impatient, anxious, has longed to bind itself to, the carnal man, the earthly man's master, has not agreed to.
So he's talking about Sinnett's lower self and his master, which is his higher self. So your higher self is not in agreement with what the lower self is doing, this searching, trying to impose yourself on us.
The ties of life are still as strong as chains of steel. Sacred indeed, some of them are, and no one would ask you to break them. There below lies your long-cherished field of enterprise and usefulness. Ours can never be more than a bright phantom world to the man of thorough practical sense. And if your case be in some degree exceptional, it is because your nature has deeper inspirations than those of others who are still more businesslike, and the source of whose eloquence is in the brain, not in the heart, which never was in contact with the mysteriously radiant and pure heart of Tathagata.
Tathagata
Tathagata.
is a term used for the Buddha. It's kind of expresses his essential nature as a lover of humanity, this profound love of all creatures. But he's pointing out, too, that Sinnett is going to have to make a tremendous effort if he's going to extract himself from this business-like society that he's enmeshed in. He's giving him several suggestions to extract himself from that. And it would be difficult. Remember, he's got a 4-year-old child. He's got a young wife in her 30s. And he has work. He's got a job to do. And he has to socialize. That's part of his job, is not just to work, but also to mingle with people, because he's in the news media business. So it would be very difficult for him. So I don't know whether KH realizes just how difficult it would be, but both of them were hopeful. They both hope to somehow make it happen.
If you seldom hear from me, never feel disappointed, my brother, but say, it is my fault. He's spending a lot of time just chastising him, this whole...
Yeah, and it's because he sees the potential, but he's also seeing that Sinnett has a lot of negative thoughts, too. And one of the worst things that we can do is to not have faith in ourselves. Anything is possible if we really believe that we can do it. If we have faith in ourselves and do whatever it takes to make something happen, we can do it. But so many people, including Sinnett, have misgivings about themselves. So we can learn from his mistakes.
Mm-hmm. Nature has linked all parts of her empire together by subtle threads of magnetic sympathy, and there is a mutual correlation even between a star and a man.
Aha.
Wow.
So that's, again, kind of a verification that there is something to astrology. We don't know all of the ins and outs of it, obviously. But
yeah,
even a star in a different solar system or even a different galaxy has a connection, subtle as it may be.
Nature has linked all parts of her empire together by subtle threads of magnetic sympathy. That's amazing.
So when we talk about all being one, it's not just our solar system, our galaxy, it's all the entire universe.
Thought runs swifter than the electric fluid, and your thought will find me if projected by a pure impulse, as mine will find, has found, and often impressed your mind.
So what he's saying is, instead of this emotional attraction, this incessant beating against my protective barrier that I have to put up against you, have a pure intention. Your pure thoughts will reach me. Your selfish thoughts I have to keep away from me.
We may move in cycles of activity divided, but not entirely separated from each other. Like the light in the dark valley seen by the mountaineer from his peaks, every bright thought in your mind, my brother, will sparkle and attract the attention of your distant friend and correspondent.
And he uses this analogy quite often. Him being the one on the mountaintop, seeing this individual struggling in the valley far below, but he can see his good nature by his aura. This tiny spark of light is noticeable even from a distance. But it's the Mahatmas who are on the mountain and the rest of us struggling down in the valley below.
If thus we discover our natural allies in the shadow world, and it is our law to approach every one, if even there be but the feeblest glimmer of the true Tathagata, light within him, it is far easier for you to attract us. Understand this, and the admission into the society of persons often distasteful to you will no longer amaze you.
So here he is saying that people that you may find unattractive because you judge them superficially, we see the light within. We see them from a very different perspective than you do.
And now let me bid you farewell for the present until the next. Indulge not in anxiety of what evil might happen if things should not go as your worldly wisdom thinks they ought.
This is very, very good advice.
For everyone, really. It's good advice for us, for our viewers, for Sinnett. Doubt not, for this complexion of doubt upsets one and pushes back his progress. To have cheerful confidence and hope is quite another thing from giving way to the fool's blind optimism. That's good as well. That's advice for all of us right now.
The next sentence is the kicker.
The wise man never fights difficulties in advance.
Yeah, how many of us waste hours and days and weeks worrying about something that never happens? The total energy and the depletion of our energy, the amount of stress we cause ourselves worrying about stuff, whatever it may be.
That's brilliant.
And 99.9% of the time, it never happens. And if it does happen, it doesn't happen the way you think it will. So why waste your time and energy on it?
Mom, if you're listening.
Well, 100% of people in the world should pay attention to that, including me.
And myself, obviously. I do that. A cloud does lower over your path. It gathers around the hill of Jacko.
Ooh, the hill of Jacko. Where could that be?
I have no idea. That's a funny name.
Jacko Hill.
Did he make that up?
No. That's the name of the hill where Hume's mansion is in Shimla. Hume lives on Jacko Hill.
Oh, my goodness. He whom you made your confidant, I advised you to become only his co-worker, and not divulge things to him that you should have kept locked within your bosom, is under a harmful influence and may become your enemy.
Aha. So they're gaining enemies everywhere. The spiritualists, the scientists, the Christians, the Hindus, everyone. They're making enemies everywhere. And now he's saying, your good friend, Mr. Hume, may become your enemy too.
No.
And he said he's under a baneful influence. And it's because, remember, he was searching for another guru to teach him. Since these guys won't teach him how to
That's right. Hume was
perform
looking.
phenomena, he's looking for someone else. And he is going to find, or has already found, someone who is appealing to his ego and saying, "Oh yeah, we'll take you on as
Do we know who he found?
Not at this point. I think we will find later who it is.
You do right to try to rescue him from it, for it bodes ill to him, to you, and to the society."
So right now, he's just kind of on notice that he may turn against you, but be very much aware of that.
Goodness. His greater mind fumed by vanity and charmed by the pipings of a weaker but more cunning one.
Now, when he says pipings, he's referring kind of like the Pied Piper. He's enchanting you.
Wow. Is for the present time under a spell of fascination.
Mm-hmm.
So he is talking about Hume here.
Yes.
His
he is
greater
under
mind.
a spell of fascination. Whoever he's communicating with is appealing to his ego, and it's working.
Wow. You will easily detect the malign power that stands behind both and uses them as tools for the execution of its own nefarious plans.
Uh-huh.
Wow. The intended catastrophe can be averted by redoubled vigilance and increased fervor of pure will on the part of the friends of SBL.
And we don't know what that is unless it's the Shimla Branch Lodge.
Work then, if you still will, to avert the blow, for if it falls, you will not escape unhurt, however great my brother's efforts. The cause will never be ruined, even though the Sisyphus's rock may crush a good many toes. Farewell again, my friend, for longer or shorter, as you may determine. I am called to duty. Yours faithfully, KH.
All right. So a kind of double-edged letter here, telling him, first of all, my sympathy, my regard for you is as high as ever, and yet we are now further apart because I've made a great leap in my progress, and you have not made a corresponding leap in your own, which may or may not be possible. But he implies that Sinnett, with great effort, could make that happen. And certainly KH is doing everything he can to make it happen. So he signs it, yours. He signs it, yours faithfully. He addressed the letter at the beginning, my brother, very simply, which is kind of nice. We are brothers. And then yours faithfully, KH. Very interesting letter here. Next up is letter number 48, and we're back with Morya now.
Oh, okay.
So after this very interesting letter from KH, we've now got one from Morya. And it was received in March 3rd, 1882. Very different tone from the letter from KH.
Well, call me an ignoramus in your English ways. And I'll say you are one in our Tibetan customs, and we will split the difference, shake hands astrally over the Akash, and square the discussion.
He's on a roll on this one.
The old woman, of course she will be frantic, but who cares? It's kept secret from her, though. No use making her more miserable than she is.
And we don't know. There's something going on that they're trying to keep away from her that needs some resolution. But if she finds out about it, she's going to get upset.
Your last letter to me is less a petition than a protest, my respected Sahib.
Now, apparently he wrote a letter and complained about the treatment of Europe, and specifically of England, by the writings of the Mahatmas. And what he said exactly, I don't know, but he was being a little bit petulant about it.
Its voice is that of the war conch of my Rajput ancestors, rather than the cooing of a friend. Wow, okay. And I like it all the more, I promise you. It has the right ring of honest frankness.
So this is the thing we love about Morya. He just tells it like it is. He doesn't mess with niceties, and he's not above satire. He appreciates the fact that Sinnett is getting something off his chest. He's like, you're being very honest about it. So I love that.
So let's talk. For sharp as your voice may be, your heart is warm, and you end by saying, whether you decree that what seems right to me should be done or not, you are ever ours faithfully, etc. Europe is a large place, but the world is bigger yet. The sun of Theosophy must shine for all, not for a part. There is more of this movement when you have any inkling of, and the work of the TS is linked in with similar work that is secretly going on in all parts of the world.
All right, we mentioned this 2 sessions ago, that Sinnett and Hume had the idea that all of the attention of the Mahatmas was focused on Europe. And he's saying, yeah, that's not the case. There are other parts of the world that exist, and we are focused on them as well. You just don't know about it.
Even in the TS, there is a division managed by a Greek brother, about which not a person in the society has a suspicion except the old woman and Olcott. And even he only knows it is progressing and occasionally executes an order I send him in connection with it.
So that's really interesting. There's a theosophical group somewhere, he doesn't say where, that is under the observation of a Greek brother. Now, this may be one that is referred to sometimes as Hilarion. He doesn't have a lot of connection with theosophical groups in general, but apparently he does with one in particular.
The cycle I spoke of refers to the whole movement. Europe will not be overlooked, never fear, but perhaps you may not even anticipate how the light will be shed there. Ask your seraph, KH, to let you have details thereof.
The seraph, meaning a high angel, a seraphim in Hebrew.
Oh, interesting.
And it's because of his recent intergalactic episodes, he's calling him your seraph, your angel protector.
That's happens to be the name of the protector of the Oracle in the Matrix movies. He's a little Asian guy who's a martial arts master, and he's the protector of the Oracle. His name is Seraph.
Oh, okay.
You speak of Massey and Crookes. Do you not recollect that Massey was offered 4 years ago the chance to head the English movement and declined? In his place was set up that old grim idol of the Jewish Sinai, Wilde, who, with his Christian rant and fanatical rot, shut us out of the movement altogether.
Yeah, he's letting loose here.
Yeah. Our Chohan forbade us absolutely to take any part in it. Massey has to thank no one but himself for it, and you may tell him so. You ought to have learned our ways by now. We advise, we never order, but we do influence individuals.
Aha. And there again is confirmation that they don't order their chelas or anyone else to do anything, because if they did, the karma would be theirs.
And they'd be interfering with the chela's free will to choose on their own.
So if you have a teacher or a leader, spiritual leader, religious leader that tells you you have to do something specific,
be wary of that.
Yeah, they're not respecting the fact that you are in control of your life. Mm-hmm. They're wanting control of it. But it brings them karma. They don't realize that. Mm-hmm. Totally unaware of that.
Mm-hmm. Ransack the spiritualist literature before the year 1877. Search and find it if you can, one single word about the occult. We find Cora of the Seven Husbands, the medium inspired in her lectures to say that the word occultism was just coined by the Theosophists, only recently coming into existence.
So he's pointing out here the influence that the Mahatmas had behind the scenes of the spiritualist movement for many years. He says, if you look before 1877, you will see no mention whatsoever of occultism or these terms that we use in our doctrine. It's only because of us that you started seeing it in 1877. This Cora of the seven husbands, she only had 4, so he's exaggerating a little bit. But
who was Cora?
She was a medium, a very well-known medium, and she was the one who talked about theosophy and the fact that no one ever heard of occultism until theosophy came along. And it's true, that is true.
But the Theosophists didn't make the word up, though. It was an English word.
Well, they started using it in a new way.
I see.
Occult, previous to that, meant only hidden or something that you couldn't perceive.
Mm-hmm. No one had ever heard of elementary spirits and astral light except the petroleum manufacturers.
And that, I assume that in oil fields, they seem to have some kind of unusual lights that exist sometimes. I couldn't find much information on it, though.
Okay. And Crookes, has he not brought science within our hail in his radiant matter discovery?
So he's implying here that they influenced him because Crookes, William Crookes, was a well-known scientist in England, and he discovered what he called radiant matter. And so he's implying, Morya is, that the Mahatmas behind the scenes influenced him in his research.
What but occult research was it that led him first to that? Know you anything of the whole brotherhood and its ramifications? The old woman is accused of untruthfulness, inaccuracy in her statements. Ask no questions and you will receive no lies.
Now, this used to be a very common saying. Even when I was a kid, people would say, ask me no questions and I'll tell you no lies.
She is forbidden to say what she knows. You may cut her to pieces and she will not tell. Nay, she is ordered in cases of need to mislead people. And were she more of a natural-born liar, she might be happier. So that's disinformation. In the case of need, she was, instead of telling the truth or divulging the secrets,
right,
she needs to give disinformation.
And quite often, she is used as an intermediary for drawing out potential chelas, testing them. So she's the agent for the Mahatmas for testing these individuals who might possibly make good chelas. But one of the things that they are asked to do is to sometimes mislead them to test their abilities as far as perceptiveness, whether or not they can perceive the truth. In any situation, if a person in power orders an individual to do something that is illegal, then they should be able to refuse that, even in war. If a general or a leader in a war situation tells his people, for example, to kill civilians, they would have every right to refuse that order and not follow through on it. But she is sometimes made to mislead people, to test them, and sometimes to make sure that secrets don't get revealed.
She is too truthful, too outspoken, too incapable of dissimulation, and now she is being daily crucified for it.
So it's her nature, and she's very sweet by nature. Her one fault is this tendency to get upset about things. Never, ever, ever have I seen anything where she had a sense of retribution, that she was going to get even with someone or get back at someone. I've never seen any indication in her nature. She is kindness itself, very much like, she's kind of a combination between Morya and KH in that she's very direct, but she's also extremely kind.
Try not to be hasty, respected sir. The world was not made in a day. Let evolution take its course naturally, lest we make it deviate and produce monsters by presuming to guide it. Massey talks of coming to India, does he not?
So whether or not he's planning to come there to investigate the Mahatmas, I don't know. I don't think he actually did it.
Who knows what may be the situation in November? You might think it such as to justify us in carrying out our threat to lock the door, while it might seem very different to us. Let us all do our best. There are cycles of 7, 11, 21, 77, 107, 700, 11,000, 21,000, etc. So many cycles will make a major one, and so on.
This is interesting, some of these numbers. We all know 7. He doesn't mention 3. That's another mystical number. 7, 11, 21, 77, 107, 700, 11,000, and 21,000. What all of those mean, I have no idea, but something to keep in mind.
Bide your time. The record book is well kept. Only look out sharp. The Dugpas and the Gelugpas are not fighting only in Tibet. See their vile work in England among the occultists and seers. Do not regard this as metaphorical, but as a real fact, which may be demonstrated to you someday.
The Dugpas being the brothers of the left-hand path in Tibet. So we might think that they are the enemies of the Gelugpas, which are the sect of Tibetan Buddhism that KH and the Mahatmas and that the Dalai Lama belong to. But they don't see them as enemies. They see them as mistaken brothers who don't recognize their divine nature. They don't believe in hatred.
It's quite useless to say anything more about Olcott's eccentricity and the inferiority of America to England. We recognize that all that is real from your point of view and knew it long ago, but you do not know how much of that is mere superficial prejudice, which blinds your eyes like the reflection of a thin taper on deep water.
So, once again, Sinnett, along with Hume, are very judgmental. They have so many complaints, both about Olcott and his bumbling ways, which they attribute to the fact that he's American and uncouth and not sophisticated like the British are, and HPB, who is Russian, and that may be even worse. So they don't have much confidence in either one of them. But he tells them again and again, you're judging on things that make no difference to us.
Take care lest we should someday take you at your thought and put you in Olcott's place. After taking him to be one of our own, he has longed to have us do these several years.
Yeah, this is interesting. So apparently Olcott has been yearning for several years to leave this world and go to that of the Mahatmas, literally, to move to Tibet and be trained by them.
Wow.
And apparently Sinnett has been thinking or stating, maybe even to certain people, I could do a better job than this guy is doing. And so Morya is saying, be careful, because we may just take you at your thought and take Olcott for ourselves and put you in his place.
Martyrdom is pleasant to look at and criticize, but harder to suffer. There was never a woman more unjustly abused than HPB. See the infamous insulting letters she was sent from England for publication against herself and us and the society.
So quite often, because she is the editor of the Theosophist magazine, she receives scathing letters from readers insulting her, insulting the brothers, and insulting Theosophy. And sometimes the Mahatmas order her to answer those and to publish them.
You may find them undignified, perhaps, but the answers to correspondence in supplement are written by myself.
So they sometimes have a supplement to the Theosophists. There's the magazine itself, which is a set number of pages, and sometimes there is additional information they want to publish, so they publish that as a supplement.
So do not blame her. I'm curious to know your frank opinion on them. You might think she could have done better herself. Morya.
So this is quite a letter. To me, it's very interesting when Morya just takes off all of the filters and lets loose. We get to see his true nature, and we see the difference between KH, who will go round and round and round trying to be careful and cautious, and Morya, who just takes an axe and cuts something like that. Both have their charms, both are useful in their own way, and yet their combination, and as we've said so many times, the brotherly love that they have for each other is just amazing to watch. Any last comments?
No.
No? All right. Well, again, interesting stuff. And by the way, we've said it before, but this drama, it is kind of drama. We don't get involved in it emotionally quite so much, but this drama continues. We will see in the future the results of some of the things that they're predicting right now, which is going to set everything on edge, plus many more things that are going to come up. So stay tuned. It's all exciting and it's all very interesting. And more than that, it's very informative of how we can improve our lives and the way we interact with people in our everyday lives. All right. Thank you for coming along with us, and we'll see you in the next exciting episode.